you. How about that? Sound? Now, do we have sound? Thank you. I'm glad we have chat. No sound, says Josie. Can't hear, says Social Crafter. Thank you, ladies. Hopefully, you can hear me now. Say yes. You can hear me now. Ah, much better. Yes, much better. Fantastic. Okay, let's start over. Quilting in a series. Did you watch the Quilt Conversations live I had on Friday about how we can use quilting in a series, quilting multiples so that we can improve our machine quilting? So guess what? I not only talk about it, I do it. And so I thought I'd come on live to show you what I've been working on. And it is multiples. This is how I create samples for classes. This is how I practice techniques. And often I will use scraps and I will use orphan blocks. In this case, this is a pre-printed panel, but I had it printed in such a way on the fabric that it left me with orphans, and I put them together. So here's the seam, and it's a very small piece. It only has two of these, one here and one here, but I had multiples of them, so I stitched them together. This part is not stitched yet. I'm in the process, so this is a work in progress. And these here are stitched at the top. So I'm using this as a way to stitch the same thing in multiple ways. So that's why it's called multiples. It's also quilting in a series. How does that help us with free motion quilting and ruler quilting? One, I can make a decision that I'm going to stitch this with certain techniques. Hello, how are you? Let's see who's here. I turn my head so I can be able to see on my other computer screen who has joined us. All right. Hopefully that's making sense with you ladies. Yes, good. Now it's working. Thank you, Wilda, on YouTube. Awesome. I don't know why I turned it off, but anyway. So, multiples. This is what I've been working on. And this is actually the second. I wanted to do some echo quilting around this. I thought I'd add some texture in here. I have stitched something similar. The original is actually four of these all together, and I stitched each one of those differently as well. But I thought, you know what? I need some practice. Let me try something different. So, echoed around this flower shape here multiple times, added some free motion here. And in doing so, I learned something. I learned something as I was filling in the space around these flowers. You know, I did some echo here. The echo at the bottom of it is very different than the echo at the top. So it created these additional shapes, right? Let me see if I can warm this. Change that. Let me go here. There we go. All right. So this was number 2 in this series, multiples, right? Here is the first one that I started a couple of days ago. And I made a decision that I wanted to do some straight line quilting. Straight line quilting. It's the same flower, right? But with straight lines, some echo, and then the background is completely different. Completely different. Hello, so glad that you're here. Welcome, welcome. So, I'm talking about how we can use quilting series where we take one thing, a quilt, a zippered pouch, a mini quilt, pre-printed panel, and we have at least 2 to 3 of them. I like to do threes so that the first one I quilt with what's very familiar to me, so I practice. And then it starts to get me inspired to try something else. So the second one, I will incorporate, say, another technique, and that could be ruler quilting, straight edge, like you see here. Then the next one would be, how can I combine or do something completely different with the next one, where the background is different and the way I quilt the flower is different. Doing it with these small projects, scrap fabric and quilt panels that are small, orphan blocks. It's a low commitment, but we still get to challenge ourselves and grow as quilters. So I talked extensively about that in Quilt Conversations Live last Friday. You can watch the replay on Facebook, Living Water Quilter Facebook page, or Living Water Quilter YouTube channel. I talked about 9 different things that we can do when we quilt in a series and what benefits it has to help us quilt our projects creatively and to have fun and to share our voice as a quilter, our design, who we are as quilters. I think that's important. So, we want to be able to freely express who we are in our projects. And I think it happens very naturally, which again, go watch the video. You'll see all 9 points discussed in detail. So, this is essentially an orphan block, even though it's a pre-printed panel, right? So I'm using it to quilt multiples and to do it differently, to test myself creatively, to push myself creatively. Even the background is different. How is this helping me? Hello, Mary. So glad that you're here. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So glad that you're here. So how is this helping me? Another thing, when we talk about series, quilting in a series, multiples, we also talk about how we can change the scale of our quilting, small, medium, and large. Whenever I'm learning a design, I practice that design in multiple sizes. And this is a reason why we want to do it. This is very, very tiny, very tiny pebbles and leaves because it's a small area. I didn't want big pebbles or berries. It's called berries and leaves. That's the pattern. So I had to practice fine motor skills in order to stitch that. So this is giving me that practice. Okay, so this is an example of an orphan block, right? Doing it in multiple ways. And then because it's actually three of them stitched together, almost like a table runner, I have, excuse me, 6 opportunities to stitch it. This is a work in progress. I still need to stitch this, right? So this is ruler quilting and free motion quilting. I'm testing myself, learning how to combine those 2 techniques, right? And then in this one, it's all straight line except for this gentle curve right here. Gentle curve. So one more thing I want to show you that I mentioned scraps. This is one that's completely different, but this was based on scraps. This here is what's left over after I use a die cutter. This part here was cut in a butterfly and put in another project. But this left over, I didn't throw it away. I saved it. And I said, I'm going to use it to practice. Oh, thank you, Pamela. I appreciate that. Appreciate that. So I am saving my scraps, my orphan blocks to practice my free motion quilting. So I took these and just stitched it down, right? This is the first one. I think it's the first one that I tried. And, it's looking okay, right? The fabric was, again, some scrap fabric. And it's not a big piece. It's only maybe about 8 inches by 8 inches. It's not very big. Opportunity to play, to add texture, right? But I wasn't liking it. So it's unfinished. And then another thing that I like to do with these is practice using different types of batting. So this is a wool batting. Very different from this. This is a cotton low loft batting. And here, this is puffy with wool batting. So scraps of batting, scrap fabric, scrap from a die cutter, all becomes my free motion machine quilting playground, my sandbox. So I didn't finish this one because I was not very inspired. I will finish it, but I wanted to try something else. Here's another piece. Same idea. It's a scrap piece of fabric after I die cut a butterfly, right? But now it's has blue in it, and so I chose a blue fabric, scrap fabric. And I chose a completely different quilting design than the previous one. And I have contrasting thread. And then I chose a low loft bat. These small projects give us experience with different threads, with different patterns, with different batting. We need to practice a lot so that when we get to the quilt, the big project, the important project, we already have experience. We have experience with low loft batting. We have experience with wool batting. We have experience stitching this design, stitching pebbles. We have experience with this free motion embroidery. I don't know if you can see this. I want to hold this up. So that's something that I did differently on this one. Let's see if that's going to stay in focus. This is free motion embroidery along the inner part, this intersection. Hello, Tiffany. How are you? So glad that you're here. Welcome, welcome. And then I tried a completely different free motion quilting pattern. Right, something that I wouldn't ordinarily pick with a butterfly. I thought swirls. I thought flowers. And that's why I stitched this original design. But I don't know, it's the fabric that's not working for me. The texture is nice. I do have one more. This is what it looks like when it's not quilted. So here it is with the leftover scraps after a die cutter on a scrap piece of fabric with another type of batting. So this is a mid-loft batting, and this one I think is mid-loft too, but the other one was wool. So this is what it looks like beforehand. So I'm going to do this one completely different, right? Because I want to practice. I want to gain experience so that when I get to the big quilt, I'm ready. So use scraps, use orphan blocks to practice different techniques. So I want the next one to be completely different from this. How am I stitching down this very thin piece of applique? I did this all by machine, nothing by hand. I just did some loops. That's it. And then to define the butterfly more, I did some free motion embroidery. I didn't do that on this one. On this one, instead, I did a little bit of echo quilting around the edge. See the echo around the shape. I don't know if I like it or not, but hey, that's what you do. You try it and then you you use it again if you like it, or apply it in a different project. So, anyone have questions? Hello, Paula. So glad that you're here. Hello, hello. So glad that you're watching. Let me know if you have questions. Ah, good question. What thread do I recommend? Now, that's another thing that these projects do. I have some threads that I love that are my favorite. I like glide thread. I like bottom line thread. I like Magnifico. Most of my quilts are stitched with glide. This is glide, glide. It's a 40 weight thread. However, in this area, I thought, should I use 40 weight thread? Because it's so small. When the area is very small and I want dense quilting, I will change my thread weight. Do I want 40 weight thread in these small areas? Or do I want very pronounced quilting with a heavier weight thread when it's a little bit of quilting? When it's really tight quilting, I might go with a 60 weight thread. Oh, Pamela, do not be intimidated. Free motion quilting is a skill that's learned over time. So be patient with yourself. I'm glad you like the idea of working with orphan blocks and with scrap fabric. That will help increase your confidence. I just finished a live teaching class. That's why I'm going live. Usually, after I teach something live in a Zoom, I will come live because I'm energized and I want to share. And it was with my students who are in the alphabet design course. My courses are unlimited because I know that free motion quilting happens over time. And as we learn one area, then we progress to another technique within free motion quilting. And I want to help ladies in that path. And so the biggest is our machine setup. So that's what we talked about tonight. I want to check in with everyone to make sure that their machines are set up for success so that it's not a hindrance to progressing with learning how to stitch designs, learning different techniques, how to go from practice to small projects and then to a bigger quilt. Each stage incorporates new things that we need to learn. So that's why it's over time. So be patient with yourself. Be patient. Don't be intimidated. Oh, Miss Dodger Blue, do not be intimidated. Oh no, all these ladies who are intimidated. Now, Miss Dodger Blue, you are asking very good questions. And these are questions that I asked myself when I started learning years ago. Because most of us, we start free motion quilting really at a deficit, if that's the right word, at a deficit. And that's because we haven't learned about thread, different thread weights. What's the difference between 60 weight, 40 weight, and 50 weight? And why do we use those threads? Why do we prefer cotton over polyester or a combination? Then there are needles. There are different types of needles based on size and based on the type, size and type. Do we want a universal needle that has a round tip? Do we want a sharp needle for free motion quilting? We want to match our needle size to our thread weight. Hey, Kathy, so nice to see you. Aw, thank you. I appreciate that. Awesome. So, to answer your question, what needle size do I recommend? It depends on the thread weight. Thread weight. Now, I always recommend if you want more information about thread and needles, go to superiorthreads.com. They have an educational section with diagrams and charts that you can download. The other thing is that Superior Threads is fantastic. When they label their thread, they tell you what size needle and type to match the thread. Not every manufacturer does this. So if you look on a spool of thread, it will tell you the weight. Superior Threads goes to the next step and they tell you what needle size. So hopefully that will help you. So please take it one step at a time to remove the intimidation, to remove the fear. Often it's knowledge and information, and then putting that into practice that will remove it. So learn about needles, learn about thread, learn how to set up your machine for success. And all of these are available mostly free, right? You can get a lot of information on YouTube University. You can go to places like superiorthreads.com. But one of the biggest things that we need to do is read our manual. Read your machine manual. Just like we use our hands, we don't think about using our thumb. We just use it. You want to get to that point with your machine. You want to know exactly how to set up your machine. Think about when you first started making quilts and you had to learn how to stitch a 1/4 inch. Or if you sew garments, what's the right seam allowance? It took us time, right, to learn what a 1/4 inch seam allowance looks like. It took us time to learn how to nest seams, how to press. Same thing with free motion quilting. If you're an experienced quilter now, meaning you can piece a quilt top, you don't really think about it because you know exactly what to do. There's a recipe for most things. Yes, we can use a common recipe, but we can also add our own spice, right? Our own touch to any recipe so that it becomes our own, right? All right. So, anything else, ladies? Any additional questions? Let's see who else has joined us. Hello, Quilt Berries. Hello, Kay. So glad that you're here. Hello, Mary. Anything else? That's a great tool. You're welcome. You're welcome. So I think that's it for me for tonight. I'm a little tired and I still have more work to do. What time is it? Yes, it's after 9 p.m. here on the East Coast. So, ladies, if you are meeting me for the first time, I am Geraldine Wilkins. I'm the Living Water Quilter. I help quilters go from frustration to fabulous by helping you learn 2 machine quilting techniques, free motion quilting and acrylic ruler quilting. And I do that at quilt shows, at guild events, and online, like social media, YouTube, and on my website. So you can go to my website if you're interested in learning more, and it's machinequilting.live. Machinequilting.live. I'll put it in the comments here. And I'll put it up on screen, machinequilting.live. Machinequilting.live. That goes to my website. Did I get that right? Okay, sorry about that going off camera. I can't see. And then if you want to go to my YouTube channel directly, it is Living Water Quilter .live. livingwaterquilter.live. And there you will see the latest Quilt Conversations live. Whoops. Let's see. Here we go. It's a conversation about quilting in a series, how to boost your creativity in machine quilting. We all need help in how to be more creative. And we want to be strategic about it because most of us don't have a lot of time. We're juggling families, we're juggling work life, school life, family life, but we also want to make time for quilting. And we want to do that so that we can have fun, right? So I share some tips on how you can do that. And if you watch, let me know. Leave a comment. I'd love to know if it was helpful. Okay. Oh, just wondering. Excuse me. If you're using a long arm or domestic machine. Good question. This is on a domestic machine. This is the domestic machine. It's a Burnett 79. I've put a couple of videos on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram showing some of this, but this is a domestic machine. I do use both. I do have a sit down long arm, but this happened to be on a domestic. This was also on the same domestic machine, all stitched there. I've learned how to set up my machine for success, right? I've learned how to do that. Did I miss any other questions? Okay, I see, Annie, that you are a long armor. And I use a sit down long arm, by the way, not a frame, in case you're wondering. All right. I see no additional questions. All right. Check me out, machinequilting.live, to learn more about my events. There's a quilting cruise coming up, a quilt show coming up where I'm teaching. Ah, you're a Gamel. All right. Wonderful. And there's all kinds of tutorials on the YouTube channel and online classes on my website machinequilting.live and livingwaterquilter.live for the YouTube channel. I'll see you next time. Thank you for joining me for a few minutes this evening.